Corruption City Part 2, Sebastopol, Victoria. This is a true story about the lowest of the low-life criminals, the scummiest characters on the planet. The story begins 2013 exposing police blatant double standards and cover-up for criminals. When the management began to promote this character, Wazza as a great fellow, in a boarding house in Ballarat. I was there because I had critical organ failure and I wasn't in good shape, not thinking straight. They never told us promoting this fellow he was taking spherical lithium tablets to control his schizophrenia madness, because he was looking around for people who had severe disabilities so he could stand over them for money later on. When we had established ourselves in our own units, the first one Wazza got in his unit. Wazza booted him out because he could not extract more money out of him. Then there was Greg. Wazza was standing over for money. When Greg left, Wazza told the rest of us he died of 97 stab wounds. That's funny, I met Greg months later. He was fine, nothing happened to him. I didn't twig on. Wazza was a professional con man liar. He established very early that his sister was a police sergeant in Ballarat. Years later, a cop checked the computer and said she can't be a policewoman because she has a mental and criminal record. Obviously, Wazza had a much bigger mental and criminal record, but no one was saying anything. This story is about do not trust anyone with mental issues. They can turn on you in a dime, threaten to kill you, rob you, stand over you for the money, and the cops won't do nothing. They are like the three monkeys: know nothing, do nothing, see nothing. Where these criminals are concerned, he was flat out to befriend me. He was pretending to be a nicest fellow on earth, with a boarding house staff standing up for him so much and praising Wazza. I was inclined to think he was a good fellow, just down on his luck. His insistence always seemed to meet me down the street, had my phone number, ringing me up all the time. Come over for a coffee. Sounded very innocent, but it was fun for a while to be with what I thought was a mate. Then the subdouble borrowing began first. $50, and he'd work it up to $250. I walked out that evening. He was claiming his pension was cut off. He was going to commit suicide with his children if he didn't get at least $300 a fortnight to survive. I was taken in 100% because, as in the rip-off video, he caught me at the beginning when I wasn't able to think straight, thinking about my own funeral more than anything, and I thought, okay, I'll try and help him out. He claimed to be waiting for his $500,000 payout, was guaranteed, and he'd fix me up 10 times for what I lent him. So okay, I fell for the 3-card trick of the con man. Probably not the first time, and it wasn't the last. Obviously I couldn't work, and they put me on a pension to survive, so I managed $300 and more per fortnight for him. Then I had large amount of savings, and I'm beginning to give him thousands of dollars at a time because he needed a walking frame for his daughter in hospital. His other daughters were having problems, he never said what, but obviously they were mental issues like he had. He appeared to be very normal, nice fellow, do anything for you, but I didn't realise it was an act to suck me in to his circle. His neighbour cowboy, we will call him, was also getting sucked in. So was I. Giving Wazza cash every fortnight, and the next week in between he had forced Cowboy to give him similar or more cash. He took Cowboy for $30,000 not long before Cowboy was chopped up by a lunatic. I'm wondering what lunatic chopped Cowboy up. The only one had reason to do that was Wazza, who was spreading word early on that he had checked in Queensland. There were warrants on Cowboy for molesting his own daughter, which was lies that Wazza was making up against everyone that he was trying to force money out of. He ended up making up the same lies about me when I disappeared. He was going around bashing his own brother-in-law in 2014-15. He was bashing characters on a regular basis. No doubt they wouldn't give him money after 12 months. Early in 2015, before I began to wake up, this was not a nice guy I had thought he was. His veneer was cracking, showing the criminal underneath, but I couldn't just disappear. I was so weak a feather would have knocked me down. I realised if I tried to walk out, I might be beaten to death. So I put up with the situation, giving him money under duress extortion of getting bashed by the time he got made it clear every fortnight those who don't give me money get bashed. As usual, thousands and thousands of dollars, more than $20,000 in less than 18 months. By this time I had checked on Google and found out Seroquel and lithium tablets were for extreme bipolar schizophrenia. Cowboy was on lithium, but he was different. He was always well-mannered. He was a victim like me of this madman standover merchant. In the last few months I was trying to figure out how I could leave because I knew the coppers would not put a stop to this character if he come after me. I was on my own. What really put me on edge in the last couple of months, he started boasting about killing people, shooting them with his pistol, and invalid pensioners were obviously his prey. He was boasting about knocking them down in the toilets for years, getting their wallet and their bank card and ramming his boot into their head until they gave him the PIN number of their card. Admitted to being in the vicinity of at least one cop was killed. Not sure what the truth of that was, but I know one thing, standing over pensioners who can't defend themselves was obviously what he was aiming at all the time. He'd obviously been doing it in the past and he was doing it right now. The time he got me to drive him to Melbourne to buy a car, $5,000, he brought $5,000 with him. I saw the rolls of $50 notes. I realised most of it was the money I had given him because still had the stand-out elastic bands I had used around the notes. So he had the money all the time while he was standing over the rest of us for more money every fortnight. I had to show up almost daily to his place because a threatening talk was coming over the phone to show up or else. Fortunately, so cool Sergeant of Police sister arrived wanting his help, and he told me to leave because he obviously didn't want me talking to his sister, so I left. I made my decision never to come back. The other guy I was in the boarding house with was different, a belligerent sort of character, and when I told him what Wazza was doing to me, he said, "Come over to my place." He said, "Bloody Wazza won't be coming around or I'll flatten him." So at this time Wazza was leaving all the threatening messages on my message bank, which I still have recorded. "The likes of you have dug your hole, you effing C. There's men coming around to put you in the boot of the car, you effing C." With all these threats in mind, I made a complaint to Ballarat Police that he had an M16 machine gun with ammunition and grenades buried in the backyard. Had an aluminium case with a 9mm pistol with a silencer, and he opened that several times and showed it to me. He shot 2 cats out his front door in Delacombe where he lived. The bullets will still be in the ground at the front door. The dead cats are still on the neighbour's garage roof. He used the M16 machine gun and fired outside Cowboy's window, and Cowboy said he jumped 3 feet off the bed when it went off. 2 separate occasions I report him for leaving death threats on my phone message bank. The copper listened to it and said, "There's nothing to see here." It was the first sign they were covering for him. I made a complaint about his M16 machine gun and pistol with a silencer and dozen hand grenades. Cops never went near him, never done nothing, covered for him all the way. I went to VCAT and got a $10,000 order warded against him for the money he owed me. The sheriff's office went around after I paid them $200 and struck a deal with him not to take any more action because Cowboy, his neighbour who hated him and was frightened of him, forced to give him money all the time from his inheritance, told me they had struck a deal with him not to take any more action. And he owned a $20,000 cabin cruiser speedboat. There's a photo of that here as well. His threats left on my message bank, which I still have. "I'll see all your guns, car, everything gone." So in early 2016, I went out to get an AVO on him because I knew he would be coming after me for more money or start bashing me when I was in such a physical wreck. So the magistrate listened to the recordings. You've dug your own hole, you F&C, and all the other threats. So she awarded me 3 years on the AVO for him to stay away. The other silly magistrate struck it down to 12 months. That gave him time to attack me a couple of years later when he was hanging around with Tony Walker, one of the next door neighbours in her unit, 20 metres away. During March 2019, he was often glaring at me across the street. Where I live, I couldn't walk anywhere because he'd be there glaring across the road at me. Much to say, your turn's coming. Already he was gloating, but I couldn't figure out why. I wasn't left long left waiting. On the 19th of March 2019, I stepped out of the door in the morning to go shopping at Wendouree Village. And it was about 11 minutes drive. As I drove into the car park there, the phone rang. The landlord was on the phone saying my unit was on fire. When I arrived back, the unit was burnt out. Ceiling collapsed. A lot of things were burnt beyond recognition, not really understanding what was this criminal behind it. I was a bit naive. Again, I couldn't very well reason well. I was more like a dead man walking by that time, so the landlord gave me a adjoining unit and shifted my blackened guns and washing machine, whatever I recover out of it, cleaned the black off them. In the meantime, his girlfriend Tony Walker was keeping a careful eye on me, pretending to be a friend, but she was checking up on me and what was going back into my second unit and what I had recovered, so she could report back to her boyfriend, Warren Kavanagh, surname spelt with a C, who she admitted later she was sleeping with. Cowboy was there as well. 3 bipolars in one room. This was more than a month later. I was admitted to hospital in Melbourne to have life-threatening surgery for my eventual recovery. I was 2 months in hospital in a bad way. On the 28th of the 6th, 2019, my second unit was burgled, so I get back home a couple of weeks later when I was discharged from hospital. So the neighbours were telling me as I got out of the car, one was clearly telling me the burglars come from Unit 13. Another one was telling me they had locked my back door a couple of times on my yard and someone kept opening it. The cops said another neighbour, the neighbours of Unit 13, she was the one behind it. Tony Walker, resident of Unit 13, because the 2 men next she was living with were there besides Wazza and Cowboy, were having drug parties with her and others. Keystone cops appointed a patrol woman from Daylesford to look into the burglary. Not even a detective. Firearms theft carries mandatory sentencing for criminals, and they appoint a patrol officer, Constable Aminia Martin, from another town. Very clear from the beginning. They never wanted to look into the matter. They probably even knew that it was going to happen, and they had the right one to appoint to the job without looking bad themselves. What a load of rotten crap they get up to after all from the neighbours pointing the finger at her and Tony Walker, and come into my unit a couple of times, and she was in company of the new temporary landlord, Kenny, her temporary landlord, Kenny, down the road. She said in front of him that Stephen Norris, Sebastopol, Rocky from Brackus Marsh were the burglars of my unit. She said she rang the cops, but they weren't interested in listening to her, and this Kenny fellow said Stephen Norris had known Stephen Norris from when he was a kid, and she said she had to leave Kenny's place because Stephen Norris was coming in the morning and putting a bullet in her coffee cup. Another one with a revolver, illegally, obviously trying to shut her up. I put all this in writing over the last 3 years since the burglary and demanded the Keystone cops get statements out of Kenny and Wazza. They have done nothing. The worst thing the police have got now is a computer. When they see you coming in, they are looking into the computer when they get your name to work out what bullshit they're going to tell you. This wasn't the way it was in the old days. They would go out and do their job and just write everything down, but the computer has made nothing more than politicians out of police. And their responses are based on who you are. This is a very rotten system in Victoria. It's the same everywhere. They have refused to get a statement out of Wazza, and they would not get one out of Cowboy, and eventually he was killed. They had Tony Walker in the paddy wagon months later because her new landlord at Springmount said she was carrying on and causing a lot of trouble, so the cops took her away months after the burglary. At my place, now they're pretending to look for her. They're just the world's greatest pretenders. That's all the cops are. Here, Stephen Norris, Rocky from Brackus Marsh, Kenny, they refused to go anywhere near any of them to get a statement out of what were they doing in that unit at that particular time. There was no trouble for years until Wazza showed up. There's been no trouble for years since he left. So now I have discussed all his previous criminal record he has told me and showed me he's capable of. But in late 2015 he was charged with rape. It's true, I know the woman. He was casually discussing with me just before I left his presence. He was going to get his policeman cousin in Geelong to have the case shifted there and would be all smoothed over. That's how many men get charged with rape. Not a single copper comes anywhere near him, and he's just casually discussing how he's going to get out of it. Talk about corruption city. So I apply in 2020 to get another AVO against him because I had fully worked out his involvement in burning me out and burgling me in the second unit as some kind of bizarre payoff to stop, because I stopped giving him any more money. That's how nutcases think. I suppose you could help them out, and they want to attack you constantly. That when I applied for the 2 AVO, the court people said we have located him. He's got 3 outstanding warrants against him. Why the hell is Ballarat Police protecting this character who is busy boasting he bashes crippled fellows to get their pension off them, standing over others? If they don't pay up, he will bash them. And I've been subjected to these threats as well, charged with rape in 2015, 3 warrants on him in 2020. What the hell is going on here? The police are protecting this character, a career criminal. He's never been anything else. What does he have on the police to make them run away from him instead of running at him and arresting him? Why are they allowing all this to go on? They absolutely ignored me and perverted the course of justice by not getting statements out of him, as per my complaint against him for burgling my unit with his friends. He was the ringleader, there's no doubt. He's always the standover merchant, so he was the ringleader, and his girlfriend, Tony Walker, told me quite clearly. He's in with all the criminals in Ballarat and Geelong. The evidence against him, burning my unit and burgling me in the second one, is outstanding. Anyone in the normal court of law, you would make threats against someone on their message bank. You're going to take everything. Everything is gone, including the guns, which then the judge would have him up before the court and say, you said this is what was going on and going to happen. This is why you're number 1 suspect, because it has happened exactly as you said it would. With the Keystone Cops, he's their godlike figure. They are bowing and scraping all the time. This makes myself and others who will read this sick to the stomach. Of hypocritical hypocrisy, propaganda worshipping coppers. You will hear more about crooked cops on Corruption City Part 1. becoming rotten to the core, and these 6 nutcases connected to the 6 nutcases the government stuck onto me to wreck me years ago in another state have one thing in common. 6 nutcases back then and 6 nutcases recently who have been certified from the nut house. They can't take lithium and Seroquel tablets unless they're certified as bipolar schizophrenia. And who's got control of the nut house? It's the government in every state. I ask the question, why are they using or letting these characters run muck and rip off and tear ordinary people apart? Why aren't they locked up permanently? This Wazza is a madman they have let loose on top of that in May 2022. I noticed smoke coming out of the unit Wazza had burnt out in 2019. It had been restored by the landlord, and there's another character in there. Was put into it, sitting on his bum all day. He ended up with no legs, couldn't walk. Belonged to the same nut house as Wazza. They all get around the dining table at the nut house. Each one of them is certified as a nut to be in there. So I opened the door on the old unit and I said, what happened here? He was in there, he never said nothing. And he said, Wazza, he was the one who started the fire. Wazza, he done it. We all know who Wazza is. The same Wazza who burnt it before. I was the one who saved this peanuts by getting the hose in quick and hosing it down. It wasn't for me, it would have been the end of Mr. Suicide Peanut. But of course the coppers who come steered a wide path around me, talking to others about the fire, but not to me. I was the one who called the emergency number. I was the one who put the fire down to a manageable level. When Wazza burnt it in 2019, there were the news making a song and dance out the front, waving their cameras around. Strange, when it went up in flames in May last year, 2022, there was no sign of the media. What a joke. This is another warning video for men on their own. The system is gearing the coppers to run after the women all the time because the state government knows women control the voting power in the household, and they're all sisters under the skin. They all claim, look at the rape in Parliament, and now there's a big pay-up. Nothing ever proved in court. What man can get payouts based on allegations from the government? They would be booted out of court unceremoniously. Just because there's not a woman involved in my house, they appoint a patrol woman as a joke to investigate the issue. That's all it is, a joke. She rang up after a month and moved the investigation over to Sergeant Hagman, who quickly shot through to Bacchus Marsh. They've been treating my case as a football ever since, with no intention of looking into nothing, doing nothing about it, just hoping as time goes by they can put stamped on it, burglary staged by persons unknown. I say bullshit because I know exactly who done it. They were there, they made the threats. They were fingered by the resident in the unit, Tony Walker. This is how crooked the law is. A woman at the chemist shop on Sturt Street has said, yes, I was burgled by several fellows. Within a week, the police had them in court. See how it goes. The lone man, they cover it up, do nothing. When a woman's involved, they're rushing around to round up the bad men. I hope this is a warning to other lone men, who are not married or involved with living with a woman. You have no hope where the Keystone cops are concerned, and they will do nothing. Cover it up, suit the criminals. When the woman's involved, they're going full throttle after the criminals because women are where the votes are. And if the women get their nose out of joint, the government can fall in the state. Simple. If they get upset, they tip the government out, and the government knows it. That's why I say the commissioner should be controlled by a Citizens Bureau of Independent Political independent of political control, in my next video, Corruption City Part 1, clear as crystal shows that this is true. I can't get the media to take this story on. They won't return my call because they are stood over by the state governments and told not to air any of my stories or grievances. This has gone on for 20 years, starting in Adelaide. Videos is the only way I can get my story out because I've had USA publishers publishing my book, giving me the runaround all the time at the top end of town. No matter what country they're in, they're all the same, trying to keep the little man under their foot. This is one of many videos I'll be airing on my channel. There's a lot of things that should be done about, especially the climate hoax. Bloomberg and all the rest are running around in private jets, pumping out millions of tonnes of half-burnt jet fuel in the sky, wrecking the environment, flying into the next climate meeting. All this electrifying and climate bullshit's about big companies digging more and making more profit, a never-ending cycle of more and more money for big companies' coffers. It's about nothing else. At the end, making electric cars and windmills. At the end of the day, it won't solve anything and make more pollution, making multinational companies richer, manufacturing junk in China and selling it to Australia. For great profit, they control the media, everything. Again, why are the police covering for this criminal Wazza? He admitted long ago he was sent to jail. He is also a convicted criminal, and they admitted he was charged with rape a few times in the past. I was extremely ill and not able to defend myself. What kind of a deranged animal is this Wazza, the lowest? He admitted he was charged with rape long ago. He is charged with rape in Ballarat. 3 warrants against him in 2020. And why are the police protecting this criminal? They won't go near him to get a single statement. Otherwise they would tell me if they did. When I speak to them, they are clearly biased towards protecting him. Why are they protecting a career criminal? Yes, he's a decorated Desert Storm trooper. He worked under General Cosgrove. Funny, when we asked him what battalion or unit he belonged to, he couldn't recall because he was never in the army. Lies, lies, lies and more lies. He has a mouthful of pre-prepared lies by the thousands to tell anyone who talks to him, depending on who they are. The lies are all specially formulated for that individual person, and he comes up with thousands of them while he's looking you in the eye. A professional lying conman, stand-over merchant, a walking encyclopedia of lies. They do exist. He is one of the best, a professional bullshit artist. I have trouble believing that coppers are so callous, and I have said so in my letter to them. I am having life-threatening operations to try and survive, and these criminals come in and burgle my second unit while I'm in hospital. And I was on dialysis for years when they burnt me out in the unit adjoining the first one. I was on dialysis at the time. These are the lowest mongrel bastard criminals on the planet to do this to a sick man. Why don't they go and pick on someone who can defend themselves? Mongrels, low-life mongrel dogs. And these coppers don't have any decency. Say enough is enough. It's about time we run these criminals in instead of staging a cover-up from day one. Don't they have any conscience or decency at all? They are covering for the most rotten, low-life, crawling criminals in the world. When I presented one of the magistrates with a written letter telling him they had done nothing, that's why I wanted the AVO against Wazza. The magistrate spotted that he had stolen my guns, and he barked at the copper sitting next to me, who broke out in a big sweat. And he said, these guns are still going around the community. What have you done about recovering them? Constable nearly fell off his stool. He got such a startle. Oh yes, we're doing everything to find them, because I had put in the statement they have done nothing, zero. not even question the neighbours. What a pack of time wasters. And it's always been the same wherever I've been, whichever state. When you're not in a relationship and you're not in a high up in the pecking order in society, the coppers will do nothing. All states are the same. NTSA, Queensland, I've lived for decades in all of them. It was very clear he chose deliberately to shack up with Tony Walker, who was a desperate woman over 60, no hope of getting any younger man into bed, so it was clear out of all the women in Ballarat he chose to be as close as he could get to me, so he could do all his mischief and directing the operations carried out by his henchmen, burning me out and burgling me in the other unit, and him and his mates are still laughing all the way to the bank with money from my stolen property. I asked the reader, isn't it incriminating for him to arrive and be living with a woman and his gang 20 metres from a man who previously had an AVO on him? This was all well planned, and he could have lived with 10,000 other women in Ballarat, but chose to be as close as he could get. No doubt to get into bed with Tony Walker and be close as he could be to me to do his mischief. The 10 million bullshit liars, the orchestrator of, works to get his own way, and obviously when he has done his dirty deeds, he went straight to Hamilton Heights in Geelong. He used Tony Walker and the others to get his revenge. He has friends in the cop shop who read the police computer, because his messages about my guns he left on my message bank were the exact same words I had told the Keystone cops. He wasn't safe to have such guns and they should be removed from him. They are the exact words he left in my message bank, which I still have recorded. Not only is he protected by the Keystone cops, but they're relaying everything back to him. Everyone complains about the way I see the Keystone cops. They're a government organisation to run after women's vote for the government. No other purpose. Look after the rich and the women, and to hell with the lone man. No votes there. This video is for the up-and-coming young and older men who want to create business and have independence and get away from the rat race, control of working for someone, of not getting used up and thrown out when they can no longer work. This is a warning video of how you can be used up and thrown out with the bathwater when you create your own business. They will attack you and bring you down because you're not one of them under their government control. They can make it up in the lodge who to attack and who to bring undone and who to wreck. They have and ruin all country young men wanting to get a start in the city. Don't do it, because you can read about the criminals they have used on me, bipolar criminals. They will use them on some stage on you and bring you down like they did with me. And my next video covers these bipolar criminals again, bringing me down years and years ago. They never stopped because the date they burnt out coincides with the dates they set me up years ago. The same kind of lunatics out of the local nut house. I know that because I visited one of them there in Adelaide, and that's in the next video, Corruption City Part 1, coming soon. A bit more about Warren Kavanagh. He used to live with Tom in Sebastopol, near me, overlooking my front door. A known pedophile and known to be stabbing himself on a regular basis to get attention. Tom had a lovely niece who used to work used to visit him to check if he was okay. Without warning, Tom stabbed his lovely niece to death and is now in the penitentiary. Wazza declared he had lived with Tom for years. Living with a murderer and a pedophile, what does that make Wazza? Way too late before I left. I never spoke to him again. I noticed all the self-inflicted stab marks on his forearms. He claimed his wife stabbed him in the back and he said he had an AVO on her. There was this male-like voice coming out of his phone talking to him, and he said later that was the wife. They were chatting like old friends. I'll let the reader decide what's going on here. Another bandwagon to get more money out of victims of crime. Pretense. This fellow is bullshit from one end of him to the other. Here is the AVO intervention order in 2016 I had on Wazza. Here is another one that I had in 2021. My calls to the Police Commissioner of Victoria has gone unanswered. I've been ignored. It is clear what the Ombudsman thinks about it when I sent him a letter. It's the corruption of certain public servants, at least, he said. I back is more like a police lapdog, because they said in this letter accompanying this that the police have done everything correct. What have they done, I ask? They have done nothing but cover up for criminals. Here is the lie to the sheriff's office. Oh yes, we've got to leave him in reasonable comfort. Here is his big double cabin cruiser worth $20,000-$30,000 at his girlfriend's place around the corner from where I live. Here's poor old Jeffrey Spencer getting humiliated by Wazza. He was later assaulted and bashed by Wazza. I couldn't do nothing, I was too weak. And it was all about getting more and more money out of Jeffrey Spencer. That's why Wazza was always working him over, humiliating him. And eventually, Wazza or someone close to him chopped him up into pieces under false pretenses because Cowboy knew too much. Just a quick one here. This was from the 80s in Adelaide. You can see all the different technologies they have there and many, many more for spying on people to know their business. Man freed over police corruption. What else is new? Police on 100 charges. Nothing to see there, that's normal. Long-serving police convicted. Pretty standard stuff throughout Australia. Corrupt to their bootstraps. And much more. I'll sign off now, and I haven't done this a face-to-face video because I don't see it as necessary. At least you've got the story there, it's true, and this book and this story is appearing in my new book as one of the chapters, and I'll do a write-up video on that book when I get a copy. And I hope you enjoyed the scenery in the forest here. Bye-bye.